Chapter 63. The Han painter wrote of facts about his legacy, and Simon King was moved and deeply saddened while watching the play. It is said that Simon King was persuaded by Count Ying, and he wiped his tears and ordered the boy to go back to watch the meal. After a while, Uncle Wu and second Uncle Wu arrived. After bowing before the spirit, he bowed to Simon King and expressed his worries. Please come to the wing and sit with everyone. Dan walked to the back and said to Yun Young, "How is it? I told you that Mom didn't believe me. How come when the second father came, he started eating after just talking?" Jin Lian said, "You are a thief. You have been a prisoner for many years, and you are taking the lead for him outside Genri. There is someone who can't control his temper," Diane said. "You have promised your master since you were a child, but you don't know who he is." "You," Mother asked. "Who will accompany him to dinner?" Diane said, "The eldest uncle and the second uncle just came, and Master Wen, together with the second father. See father, Han Bao and brother-in-law. There are 8 people in total." Yun Yang said, "I'm just asking your brother-in-law to come and eat in the back and squeeze in on top." Diane said, "Brother-in-law has sat down." Yun Yang ordered, "You and the boy go to the kitchen to get food. You also get our porridge to eat with him, in case he won't eat in the morning." Dan said, "Who else is there? When I was at home, I went out to report the funeral and buy things." Wang Jing also asked him to borrow a cloud board from Zhang's father. Yun Yang said, "That servant, Shutong, should take it with you, for fear of beating his gauze hat and spreading his wings." Dan said, "The book boy and the painting boy are in front of the soul. One is beating the rock, and the other is waiting to burn incense and paper." Chen Hong, his father, asked him to exchange silk with Ben Si again. He thought the silk was not good, so he had to exchange it for 6 cents apiece. A match breaks filial piety. Yun Yang said, "Let's talk about it. Let's exchange it for 5 cents. Then she said, "Call the little slave Hua Tunger and take it with him quickly. Just don't worry about what you will suffer." Diane then and the painting boys brought large plates and bowls to the front and placed the seats at the 8 immortals table. Everyone was eating when they saw Ping and take it in and report. Dad Jia sent a letter writer and sent 3 squads of military guards here to agree. Simon King looked at it and said, "I will reward him with 3 taels of silver. Write a posthumous note back to your father Jia. Thank you very much." After finishing the meal, he accepted the guy. "I saw Mr. Han, the painter who came to protect him, arrive." Simon King bowed to him and said, "Mr. Fan revealed his secret and passed on the Son of God." Then Mr. Han said, "The villain can understand." Uncle Wu said, "It's a little late to start. I'm afraid my face has changed." Mr. Han said, "It doesn't matter. Even if the confession is revealed, it will be spread." Just as we were finishing tea, we suddenly saw the news coming. Uncle Hua outside the door is here. Simon King accompanied Hanako in front of the funeral and cried for a while. After seeing the ceremony, he was with everyone, so he asked, "When?" After sleeping, the girl got up and looked, and she was out of breath. Seeing the child next to Mr. Han holding a screen insert and taking out a color pen from his sleeve, Hanako asked, "Brother-in-law is going to pass on a godson now?" Reading, thinking about him and thinking about his son. At the same time, he ordered the guests at the back to stay away, raised the curtain, and led Mr. Han and Uncle Hua to the front. Mr. Han lifted up the Key flag and took a closer look. He saw Li Pinger wearing a crow-green handkerchief. Although she had been ill for a long time, her color was as old as life, and her appearance remained unchanged. Her lips were rosy and lovely. Simon King couldn't help but cry. Libo and Kintong were holding screens and colors beside them. Mr. Han knew it as soon as he saw it. Everyone gathered round him to ask for a painting, and Earl Ying said, "Sir, this is a sick face. When you are well, you still have a plump face and beautiful appearance." Mr. Han said, "You don't need to be told by your elders. I know it. I dare to ask Dad. Is this old lady the former one who burned incense in Yu Temple on the first day of May and met her in person?" Simon King said, "That's right. It was fine at that time, sir. Please think carefully and paint a large shadow and a half-length body to make offerings in front of the soul. I will give you a piece of satin and 10 taels of silver." Mr. Han said, father's orders, the villain will do everything with care. In a moment, the whole body was painted, with beautiful jade appearance and delicate jade skin. If you show it to everyone, it will be a picture of beauty. Simon King looked at it and told Diane, "Take it with your mother and take a look at it to see if it's good. If there are any problems, it can be improved." Dan took it to the back and said to Yoon Yang, "I told you to take a look at Liu Niang's painting and see if it looks like the others. I told you to go out and teach Mr. Han how to change it," Yoon Yang said. "After becoming a spirit and tinkering, people don't know where they died, and they trace their shadows again." Pan Jinlian then said, "Who are his children? Draw a shadow and pass it down to the gods, so that you can kowtow for him. When 6 wives die tomorrow, it will be better to draw 6 shadows." Meng Yulu and Li Jier took it over to look at it and said, "Madam, come and see, Sisterly looks like Hershey. She is freshly dressed, but her lips are a little flatter." Yoon Yang looked at it and said, "The forehead on the left side is a little lower, and the corners of his eyebrows are more curved." "What a shame for this man," Diane said. "He once met Liu Niang in the temple. Just thinking about it, I drew something like this." After a while, Wang Jing came in and said, "Every time I look at it, I tell you to take it out." "Kiao's father is here. Wait for Kiao's father to take a look." Diane walked forward and said to Mr. Han inside, "The lips are a little flatter, the left corner of the forehead is a little lower, and the eyebrows are a little more curved." Mr. Han said, "It doesn't matter." Then he took the tracing pen and corrected it, and showed it to Kiao Dahu. Kiao Dahu said, "This portrait of my mother-in-law is really well done, only one breath is missing." Simon King was full of joy. He handed Mr. Han 3 minutes of wine and took care of the food and wine. He also taught him to take out a ruler and 10 taels of white gold and gave it to Mr. Han. He taught him, first make a half body, and then hang it. Big shadow. Just go to the funeral without missing a beat. All should be made of bright green, with neat crowns and robes, and silk to mount the tooth shaft. Mr. Han said, "There is no need to give instructions, the villain knows." After receiving the money, he taught the child to hold the screen and said goodbye before going out. Kiao Dahu and the others looked at the finished coffin again and asked, "Is my mother-in-law already buried in a small coffin?" Simon King said, "Now we are here as travelers to have a small coffin. The big coffin will have to wait for 3 days." After Kiao Dahu finished the tea, he took his leave. After a while, a passerby came to wait on him, rolled up the papers, and laid out his quilt. Simon King wanted to see him personally, and forced Chen Jingji to be a filial son. They kissed him, and Simon Qingshuan found a bead and placed it there. In his mouth, immediately, the small coffin was ready and placed neatly in front of the photo, and the whole family burst into tears. Leixing Yuming made 4 piles of gold and powder in his clothes shop, holding basins and towels to wash his hair. 2 of them were placed on each side. The yeast-stove vase, candlestick and incense box in front of the soul were made by a tinsmith and placed on the table, shining brightly in the sun. He exchanged another 10 taels of silver and taught the silversmith to make 3 pairs of silver cups. He also agreed with Count Ying to take charge of the funeral books. He first exchanged 500 taels of silver and 100 coins, and entrusted them to Han Han to take care of the accounts. Bai Si and Lai Xing'er were in charge of the comprador and the outside kitchen. Count Ying, Zida, Wen Xiu Kai and Gan took turns to accompany the mourning guests. Chui Ben was in charge of mourning accounts. Lai was in charge of the external warehouse. Wang Jing was in charge of the wine room. Chan Hung and Painting Boy were in charge of serving the mourners. Ping and the 4 platoon troops were in charge of the single person. He came to play cloud tablets and hold incense paper. He also asked a writer to lead the 4 platoon troops, record the door book at the front of the gate, mark the date of chanting, and carry umbrellas and banners. All appointments have been made, notices have been written and posted on the screen wall, and everyone must abide by them. Zhu Nai, the emperor's minister, sent someone to send 60 fir sticks, 30 moso bamboos, 300 reed mats, and 100 hemp ropes. Simon King rewarded the visitor 5 coins of silver and sent him a posthumous reply. Went. Instruct the builders to raise the ridge of the shed to make it larger. Leave the doors to go out, and sandwich the screen wall in the middle. 3 more tents are built in the front kitchen, and 7 tents are built at the front door. Please ask the 12 monks of Baoan Temple to read first. In the Pao Tu Sutra, serve tea with 2 cups of tea and 1 every day. Uncle Hua and Uncle Wu sat for a while, then got up and went. Simon King asked Wen Shukai to write a note of filial piety. He wanted to publish it and ordered it to be written. Jing's wife is dying. Wen Shukai quietly showed it to Earl Ying. The Earl said, "This ceremony does not make sense. Seeing that the Wu family's sister-in-law is here now, how do you manage the room? When you go out, no one will talk about it. Even Brother Wu feels uncomfortable. Wait until I talk to him slowly, and don't write anything." We sat with him until late in the evening, and then we all dispersed and went home. Simon King did not go to the back at night, so he installed a cool bed next to Li Pingera's spirit, surrounded it with a screen, and stayed alone until Chen Hong and Shedinger came to wait on him. At dawn, he went to Yun Young's room to freshen up, and put on a white tang scarf, a morning crown, a morning dress, white velvet socks, and white shoes, which he took with him. In the early morning of the next day, Jia Tixing came to visit the funeral and express his condolences. After Simon King returned the gift, Wen Shukai accompanied him and left for tea. When he arrived at the door, he ordered the writer, Hao Sheng agrees, any platoon troops that cannot be found will be brought to the Yamen for punishment. After that, he went on horseback. Simon King ordered Wen Shukai to post a message and send people to invite relatives to chant sutras for 3 days, and come early to eat fast. Later in the afternoon, arrangements were made to tidy up the dojo and hang the Buddhist statues. No need to go into details. On that day, Wu Yin'er inquired and learned that he came to the funeral in a sedan chair, cried and laid paper. To the back, Yun Yang meets each other. Wu Yin'er kowtowed to Yun Yang and cried, "Liu Niang is gone. I don't know a word of tongue, so there is no one to talk to me. It's so pitiful." Meng Yulu said, "You are his goddaughter. When things go wrong, why don't you come to see him?" Wu Yin'er said, "Good Sanyang, I just know that there is someone who doesn't come to see him. I'll die if I lie. I really don't know." Yun Yang said, "If you don't come to see your mother, he still cares about you. He left something to say to you, and I will keep it for you." Yin ordered Xiao Yu, "Take it out and show it to Sister Yin." Xiao Yu walked inside, took out the baggage, and opened it to find a set of satin clothes, 2 gold-headed hairpins, and a golden flower. Wu Yin'er cried like raindrops and said, "If I had known that his old man was not well, I would have come to stay with him for 2 days." After saying that, he thanked Yun Yang. Yun Yang waited for tea with him and left him for 3 days. On the 3rd day, the monk made a rock, chanted sutras in the ashram, and picked out paper money. Everyone in the family wears linen and mourns. Chen Jingji wore a heavy filial piety scarf and worshipped in front of the Buddha. Neighbors, relatives, friends and officials all came to pay their respects and offered memorial papers, regardless of their number. Mr. Zhu of Yin and Yang came early to serve the coffin. After the memorial service was completed and a body was carried into the coffin, Simon Qingjia and Wu Yunyang found 4 sets of colored clothes from him and put them in the coffin. 4 small silver coins were placed in the 4 corners. Hanako said, "Brother-in-law, there is no need to put him in there. Gold and silver will surely come out in time, so it is not a long-term plan." Simon King refused and insisted on placing it. After a while, the 7-star board was put down, the purple cover was put on, and the 4 sides of the pillar were nailed together with long-lasting nails, and the whole family burst into tears. Simon King cried so much that he kept shouting, "My young sister, I will never see you again." After crying for a long time, he sent Mr. Zhu away after attending to the meal. The whole family wears turbans and mourning clothes, and when they perform incense, the front of the door is all white. When Shukai recommended it, and Du Zhongshu from the north came to write an inscription. Du Zhongshu's name is Sichen, and his nickname is Yunye. He used to serve Zhenzong in Ninghal, now he is sitting at home. Simon King prepared gold and silk to invite him. A fruit box was prepared in the rolling shed. Simon King personally delivered 3 glasses of wine, and Earl Ying and Wen Shukai accompanied him. When the imperial official Ming Ning wrote a banner, Simon King wanted to write the 11 words edict to seal Simon Gongrenli's coffin in Jinyi. The earl repeatedly refused and said, "Seeing that the royal wife is here, how can I do it?" Du Zhang the calligraphy said, "Having given birth to a son is not a hindrance to etiquette." After talking for a long time, the word gong was removed and replaced with, when Xiukai said, "The honorable person is the married woman and has a title, the royal person is the person in the house, it's just a common name." So he finished the inscription with white powder, pasted the words edict and feng in gold, and hung it in front of the soul. He mentioned the Lord of God again. He knelt down to thank Du Zhongshu, took care of the food and wine, and then left. On that day, each family of Qiao Dahu, Uncle Wu, Uncle Hua, Uncle Han, and Uncle Shen sacrificed 3 animals on the table to burn paper. Mrs. Qiao Dahu, together with Wu Dejinzi, Jinzi and Hua Dejinzi, came to mourn in sedan chairs, offering sacrifices and crying. The moon goddess and others all wear filial piety buns, their heads tied around their waists, and linen filial piety skirts. They come out to return the favor and express their condolences, leaving them behind for tea and fasting. Only Hua Dejuzi and Hua Daju are filial piety upright, while the rest are light filial piety. That day, Sister Li Gui inquired and learned that she had come to load the paper in a sedan chair. When she saw Wu Yin'er here, she said, "When did you come? Why can't you wait for me? Good man, it turns out I only care about you." Wu Yin'er said, "Me too. I didn't know my mother was gone, but I would have come to see her if I had known. Yu Nyang will take care of things from behind, so there is no need to elaborate." After a while, I saw the first 7, and there were 16 monks from Bowen Temple again. The monk named Lang was at the head, leading the water and land dojo, reciting the Lotus Sutra, and worshipping the Samadhi water repentance. All relatives, friends and associates gathered together. On that day, Taoist official Wu from the Jade Emperor Temple came to pay homage to the emperor and took the 27 scriptures. Simon King stayed in the scroll shed to eat. Suddenly I saw a boy coming to report, "Mr. Han has sent a half figure." When everyone looked at it, they saw that he was wearing a gold and green crown, a pair of phoenix pearls to pick cards, a bright red makeup and a flowered robe, and a white and fragrant face. As if he were alive, Simon King was filled with joy when he saw him. When the wood was hung, everyone praised it. It's just a little less breathy. While letting people eat in the rolling shed, they told him, "Dang needs to work harder." Mr. Han said, "How dare you be careless when you polish your essays?" Simon King rewarded him generously and laughed. At noon, Qiao Dahu came to offer sacrifices. There were about 50 pigs and sheep sacrifices, gold and silver mountains, satin and silk ribbons, and paper sticks and incense sticks. They were hung on the ground and lifted high. Gongs and drums were played. Fine music was played, and tassels and strings were noisy. Simon King and Chen Jingji put on mourning clothes and paid tribute in front of the deceased. Qiao Dahu invited 7 or 8 relatives and friends from Shangzhouran, Zhu Tangguan, Uncle Wu, Liu Zuguan, Hua Qianhu, and Wen Qin's family to offer incense in front of the funeral. After the 3 offerings were completed, they all knelt down and listened to the blessings read by Yin Yang Shang. Wei Zheng has been in the 7th year. The year is Dingyu, the 9th day is Gengshan Shuo, the 22nd day of Yu is Xinsi. And Qiao Hong, the descendant of the family, would like to use his strong mane and soft hair as a concubine to be ashamed. I laid a memorial ceremony to pay tribute to my deceased mother-in-law, Simon Ruren Li, the spirit said. "Oh, the nature of a child is generous and gentle. He is diligent and thrifty in managing his family. He is kind to his family. He restrains his wife's morality, and he is famous in his country. The beauty of the boudoir, the fragrance of orchids and flowers, the long-term match for a gentleman, and the service of Luan Huang. The blue jade has been planted, and the pearl has been polished. In the right period, you can play the harp and harp for eternity, and enjoy a long life without borders. Hu Wei is sick, dreaming of breaking the yellow beam. Who doesn't feel sad when a good person dies? A weak girl is in swaddling clothes, showering her with love on her wife. If you don't expect the middle way, God will not follow your wishes. and the Mandarin duck will go astray. Hate is separated from the netherworld, don't see the hidden things. The long friendship is contained in this cup. Ling Qi has knowledge, and he comes to Jan to Shen, Shang Shao. After the officials and guests have finished offering sacrifices and returning gifts, they are left to wait at the tables and seats in the rolling shed. Then Mrs. Qiao Dahu, Mrs. Kui's mother, Mrs. Zhu Tangguan, Mrs. Shang Zhiren, and Sister Duan all paid tributes to the guests and their family members. Gongs and drums were played on the ground, and the ghost team danced in front of the spirit. After Wu Yunyang cried with her, she asked her to go to the back to wait for tea and a banquet. There was no need to go into detail about the 3 soups and 5 cuts. Simon King was having wine with others in the rolling shed when suddenly a cloudboard sounded in front of him. The one who agreed hurriedly came in and reported, "My lord who is here with the paper, get off the sedan at the door." The panicked Simon King quickly put on mourning clothes and waited in front of the spirit. Even if Wen Shukai went out to greet him in plain clothes, his left and right hands would first bring incense paper, and then Hu Fuyin would bring them in plain clothes and gold. Many officials gathered round, holding their clothes and belts. When they arrived in front of the spirit, Chun Hong knelt down, held the incense high, offered it, and bowed twice. Simon King said, "Old sir, please get up. I have plenty of work to do." He quickly came down and returned the gift. Hu Fun said, "When did your wife die? The students only found out yesterday." "It's too late to hang up. It's too late to hang up," Simon King said. "The side room is ill and cannot be saved. It is in vain to humiliate the old gentleman." When Shu Kai bowed beside him and asked him to go to the hall to have a cup of tea, Hu Fuin got up, and when Shu Kai walked out of the door and got into the sedan chair, the person offering sacrifices eats it and then disperses it at noon. The next day, Zheng Ayuer's family in the courtyard came to hand over the paper. Ayuer went to the soul and burned the paper, seeing that he had brought 8 plates of cakes, rice, and soup to commemorate him. Yuan Nine quickly begged for a piece of silk morning skirt to give him. Wu Yun'er and Sister Li Gui both paid 3 coins to pay homage to Simon King. Simon King said, "What's it worth? Everyone just needs a piece of silk with him." Yunyang invited her to the back room, where she served tea and stayed the night. In the evening, relatives, friends and people came to stay with me and asked a group of high-end children to act in a play. Li Ming, Wu Hui, Zheng Feng, and Zheng Chen all agreed here. Simon King placed 15 tables and seats in the greenhouse. Headed by Qiao Dahu, Uncle Wu, Second Uncle Wu, Uncle Hua, Uncle Shen, Uncle Han, Ni Shu Kai, Wen Shu Kai, Medical Officer Ren, Li Si, Huang For, Earl Ying, Zi Zaida, Zhu Xinian, Sun Zizui, Bai Lai Guang, Chang Jiji, Fu Rixen, Han Daoguo, Gan Chunjiang, Ben Dechuan, Wu Shenshen, 2 nephews, and 6 or 7 people from the neighborhood were all present. It's a table opening. After lighting a dozen large candles, the guests gathered round the screen in front of the soul, placed tables and seats under the curtains, and went out to watch the performance. At that time, everyone had finished paying their respects. Simon King and Jingji returned from the ceremony and sat down at the banquet. The actors below moved the gongs and drums and performed the story of the marriage between Wei Gao and Yu Xiaonu. After a while, he pretended to be Wei Gao and sang for a while. Tai Dan played the jade flute and sang again. The cook serves soup and rice and cuts the goose. Earl Ying then said to Simon King, "I heard that the 3 sisters in the courtyard are here. Why don't you invite me to come out and share a glass of wine with my father-in-law and Uncle Qiao? It would be beneficial for him to know how to read a play." Simon King then asked Diane to come in and said, "Please ask his 3 sisters to come out." Qiao Dahu said, "This is not appropriate. He came to mourn. How can I ask him to hand over the wine?" The Earl said, "Old relative, you don't know. Don't leave a little whore like this alone. Come with me quickly. Take it out. You said that the 2nd father said that the 6th mother is gone, so she should only be filial and pass a glass of wine to each of me." Diane went in for half a day and said, "I heard Ying's 2nd father was sitting there, but he didn't even come out." The Earl said, "Now that you have said it, I will go." After taking 2 steps, He sat down again. Simon King smiled and said, "Why did you come back again?" The Earl said, "I am determined to drag those 3 little whores out. I will not go until I curse a few words and vent my anger." Being behind, Diane asked again. And then the 3 of them came out slowly. They were all dressed in white silk jackets and blue satin skirts. They bowed to the people at the table and stood beside them with a smile. Earl Ying said, "Whenever I'm here, why do you just push me and refuse to come out?" The 3 of them didn't agree, so they handed the wine back to the people above and set up a table to sit at. The drums and music were playing below, and I came up with my eyes closed. Sheng was dressed as Wei Gao, and Jing was dressed as Bao Zhenmu, and they went to Yu Xiao's house in Gulanli. The mother came out to greet her, and Bao Zhenmu said, "Go and ask the sister to come out." Ma said, "Guan Bao, you are not a good person. My daughter can't come out at any time. I can't say please. How do you say ask him to come out?" Sister Li Gui smiled at the table and said, "This one's surname is Bao, just like Ying Wazi. She is just an ignorant bitch." The count said, "Little slut. I don't know how to like me." "How can your mother like me?" Sister Gui said, "He likes you. Get over it." Simon King said, "Let's watch the show. Don't say anything else. If you talk again, you will be punished with a large glass of wine." The Earl was silent. The actor did it again and then quit. On the left side of the hall, those watching the opera from the hanging curtain are Wu De Jinzi, Jinzi, Miss Young, Grandma Pan, Aunt Wu, Aunt Meng, Wu Shenshen's daughter-in-law Zheng Sanji, Sister Duan, and the Yunyang sister of the same family, on the right side. Those watching the opera from the hanging curtain are its spring plum blossoms, jade flutes, orchids, Yingchen and Xiaoyu, all crowded to watch. Zheng Ji, who was making tea, was passing under the curtain with a plate of nut tea. ChunMei stopped him and asked, "Who are you going to take tea with? Take a cup of this spring plum in your hand." Xiaoyu didn't want to hear that the dancer below who was acting was also called Yu Xiao. So she pulled Wang Xiao and said, "Whore, your lonely old man is here. The madam asked you to pick up the guests, but you haven't gone out yet." She pushed hard and pushed straight out of the curtain. ChunMei held tea in her hand and pushed it all over. He scolded Yu Xiao. "What a whore, I don't know what Zhangzi is. She is so stubborn." She pushed someone's tea and spilled it. "She didn't break the teacup a long time ago." Simon King heard this and sent Anna down to ask, "Who is making noise in there?" ChunMei sat on a chair and said, "Go and say, a prostitute with a jade flute is a prostitute who has seen such a profligate man." Simon King asked once, then handed the wine to the table. And that was it. Yunyang walked over and scolded Xiaoyu, "The day you come out, you should also take a look into the house. Everyone is here. Who is in the house?" Xiaoyu said, "Sister, I went behind just now, and the 2 masters are also there, sitting in the house." Yunyang said, "I'll teach you thieves to look around here and stir up trouble." When ChunMei saw Yunyang coming, she quickly stood up and said, "Mom, ask him. They all look like people with wind disease. They are crazy and have no color. They are laughing and joking, and they don't care about anyone seeing them." The Yunyang scolded her for a while, but then she went over there. At that time, Qiao Dahu and Nishu Kai got up first. Uncle Shen, Medical Officer Ren, and Uncle Han were also about to get up, but Earl Ying stopped him and said, "My boss, please say something. We are friends and don't dare to leave. Even one of the in-laws has to go." Uncle Shen is not separated by the door. Uncle Han, Mr. Ren, and Uncle Hua are all outside the door. It's 3 o'clock in the evening and the door hasn't been opened yet. Why are you panicking? Come and sit back. You haven't closed your eyes yet. Simon King also ordered the boy to carry 4 jars of mango wine and put them in front of him, saying, "You only have these 4 jars of wine, and I won't keep them either." Because he placed the big reward bell in front of Uncle Wu, he said, "Whoever leaves the table and sits down to talk about getting up will be punished by Uncle Wu." So everyone sat down again. Simon King ordered the book boy, urged the disciples to quickly close their eyes and tell them to sing in a lively place. After a while, the drums were moved, and the last actor came up and asked Simon King, "Do you want to sing the part of Sending True Face?" Simon King said, I don't care about you, as long as it's fun. Dan dressed up as a jade flute and sang. When Simon King can sing the line, it's hard to meet each other in this life, so I send you a picture. He suddenly remembered Li Ping'er's appearance when he was ill, and felt it in his heart. He couldn't stop tears from falling from his eyes, and he couldn't help but take a sweat towel from his sleeve to wipe it. Pan Jinlian saw her coldly from behind the curtain, pointed at Yun Yang, and said, Madam, you see, he is such a tramp with no background. How can he cry when he sees a performer while eating wine? Yu Yulu said, You are so smart, but you don't know these things. There are joys and sorrows, partings and reunions. I must have seen that part of the story that touched his heart. When he saw things, he missed people, and when he saw saddles, he missed horses, and that's why he shed tears. Jin Lian said, I don't believe it. He sheds tears while talking, worrying about the ancients. These are all vain. If he can make me cry when he sings, then I will consider him a good actor. Yun Yang said, Sixth sister, please listen carefully. Yuling said to Da Jinzi, I don't know why my sixth sister has to speak quickly. The actor performed it again, and around 5 o'clock, everyone stood up. Simon King blocked the door with a big cup and handed him wine. He couldn't keep the money, so he sent them all out. After watching the guy, he left the theater box and said, Tomorrow, Eunuch Liu and Eunuch Zhu will come to pay homage, and we will continue to do it for another day. The actors agreed. After taking care of the food and wine, he returned to his place to rest. Li Ming and the other four also returned home without mentioning anything. When Simon King saw that it was getting dark, he went back to rest. Exactly, how much do you get? The red sun reflected in the window is cold and pale, and the light of dawn is faint in the light mist of bamboo.
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.